AITA, I asked my trans daughter to choose an Indian name. My husband and I come from a traditional Indian family, immigrated to the US for college and stayed here, so please bear in mind that we really don't know much about all the nuances of the LGBTQ+ community, since we were never really exposed to that. I decided to bring my situation here so I can get some third-party advice. My son, now daughter, 15 female, recently came out as a transgender girl. We immediately accepted her, told her we loved her no matter what. I got her talking to a gender specialist therapist. We entered family therapy and my husband and I have spent a lot of time reading and educating ourselves on what it means to be trans. Unfortunately, my husband and I also lost a lot of friends and family who decided that my daughter was a freak and that we were abandoning our culture and values. While we realize that we are better off without these ignorant people, it has been tough. Despite having my siblings, some close friends and my husband stand by me. So, several months ago, I joined a support group for parents of kids who are trans. It has been really helpful, and I feel like it is a great place for me to voice my concerns and also express my feelings. A week ago, my daughter brought up how she probably wanted to change her name. Right now, we are calling her a gender-neutral nickname of her dead name, think Vikrant to Vicky. I completely understand that having remnants of your dead name can be very bad, so we told her that we would support her in her name-changing process. I also mentioned that I had a list of girl names that I never got use. I have 3 biological boys, and I would love if she wanted to use those names and if my husband and I still got to name her. We even offered to do a redo of her traditional Hindu naming ceremony with her new name, which she loved. She said she would think about the names. She mentioned having a white name like Samantha, and asked me what I thought. I told her that it was her choice, but I would love if she chose an Indian name, so she always has a piece of her heritage with her and that would make us happy. She said she hadn't thought of that and she'll come up with some names later. I mentioned this in our support group, and one white mom got really angry at me. She started saying that I was a bad mom who was forcing my daughter to pick a name I wanted and forcing her to embrace a culture that rejected her. She brought up my estranged parents, who I had talked about in previous sessions, and how I was trying to force my daughter to be more like them. That was not my intention, but I feel terrible now and can't stop crying. Am I the asshole?
Not the asshole. You are supporting her. You aren't forcing her to go with an Indian name. You are just saying you would love it if she did, and doing it in a way to make her feel accepted and loved. You're doing great.
Not the asshole, not the asshole, not the asshole. That mom was the asshole. I think you went about making your request suggestion very respectfully. You didn't tell her she had to do it, you asked. Absolutely not the asshole for making the request, and your daughter is also not the asshole if she chooses to go with a more white name. I feel like that white mom is just oblivious to the power, emotion, and meaning that cultural ethnic names can carry. Even if your daughter doesn't love the culture or community due to negative experiences, she should feel proud to be Indian and brown. She should feel proud of her heritage. You sound like a good mom. You emphasize that her name was her choice. You literally did nothing wrong.
Not the asshole. You asked your daughter to consider it and ultimately left the decision in her hands. Do you know how many people would give anything to have their parents be as supportive and interested as you and your husband are being? Coming from another white woman, the lady at your group is virtue signaling and trying to show how woke she is.
I think showing your daughter the list of girl names you had picked out for your children is a beautiful and loving gesture. I hope she chooses one. But if she doesn't, that's okay too. Not the asshole.
Trans guy here. Woke allies. Or rather, not quite woke would be allies, who are actually annoying as FCK and who are not actually helping anybody, but they sure like to collect woke points. No. You are not the asshole. You are not forcing anything. You are supporting your daughter and are asking her to consider something that you definitely are allowed to care about. Now, if you would threaten to cut her off if she choose a Western name, that would be a different story. That woman needs to back off. Not only is she minding things she has no business minding, that smells of an unhealthy dose of racism on top of it. Not the asshole. Not at all. The culture didn't reject her face with rolling eyes. You know how many Americans reject their trans children. So none of them can choose an American name. That's ridiculous. You're not forcing your daughter. Just sharing your thoughts.
White mom can back off. Sounds like your daughter is open to having a name connected to your culture, you aren't forcing anything. Nothing is even set yet, right? This is none of this woman's business, this is between your daughter and you.
Not the asshole. I'm trans, and if my parents had offered me a list of guy names they'd considered for me when I came out to them, I think I would have cried with joy. I think it is a really beautiful offer you've made to your daughter, especially as, from my understanding, you wouldn't be angry or rejecting if she did end up choosing a Western English name. The woman in your support group is the worst kind of ally, emo, and doesn't know what she's talking about. I am not an expert on Indian culture at all, but it seems to me that you are showing your daughter that your culture doesn't reject her, and that she can be Hindu and trans, if she wants to be. You know your daughter and your culture better than she does, and you're doing great, I think.
You need to ask this on Ask Transgender, not here. Actual trans people will help you figure out how to approach this, and they can share experiences on whether this would or wouldn't be a good idea.
Not the asshole. You've been incredibly supportive and have never tried to force her to do anything, just gave suggestions. Thanks for being a good parent, Heart.
I'm going with not the asshole. Just please make sure she understands that it is ultimately her choice and you will be happy with whatever she picks. She started saying that I was a bad mom who was forcing my daughter to pick a name I wanted and forcing her to embrace a culture that rejected her. You, her father, and your siblings are of Indian culture and have not rejected her. Your culture did not reject her, individuals did, so don't feel that way. NTA.
Auntie, may I call you that? Don't worry. You've been incredible, I promise. I'm also Indian and I know the stigma and struggles that you all must be experiencing. You did a good thing, the right thing. In fact, I would say the best thing. By offering to let her know the baby names that you had compiled for if it were a girl and the request that the name be Indian, you are showing her that her cultural and gender identities are not separate. She can be a girl and still hold a culturally significant and powerful Indian name that was given to her with as much pomp and grace as you would give anybody else whilst naming them. I promise, she's probably thrilled and so happy that you guys have been as great as you have been. Don't worry, Auntie, you're doing the right thing.
Not the asshole. You have fully supported your daughter and it sounds like you only suggested a traditional name. You didn't demand it or make a threat about doing something bad if she chose something different.
Not the asshole. As a trans guy, the first can tell you having your parents be accepting and wanting to be involved in the process like you have done is a great feeling. When I was trying to work out a new name, the first thing I did was go to my mum and ask her what I would have been called had I been assigned male at birth. And I took that, changed it ever so slightly, swapped the first name for the middle name, and have gone by that since. It sounds like you're doing a great job and are a fantastic parent.
Not the asshole. This is one of the most supportive Am I the asshole posts I've seen.
Not the asshole. I think you are being terrific supportive parents and your approach to renaming, as long as you give your daughter the final say, is a wonderful one.
She mentioned having a white name like Samantha and asked me what I thought. I told her that it was her choice, but I would love if she chose an Indian name, so she always has a piece of her heritage with her and that would make us happy. She said she hadn't thought of that and she'll come up with some names later. So you're having an open and loving conversation with your daughter and are also suggesting that she could possibly look into some traditional names. You're being so supportive, it's heartwarming. Like legit, unless there is more to this story. I literally can't think of a reason why someone else would be offended by the process you're going through. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. This other mom's opinion is completely irrelevant here. The only opinion that matters is your daughter's, and she seems to be okay with the discussion you had with her. Welcome to Am I the Asshole? Please view our voting guide here, and remember to use only one judgment in your comment. Help keep the sub engaging. Hashtag Dawn, Downvote assholes. To upvote interesting posts. Click here for our rules, and click here for our FAQ. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit message composed to =Amy the asshole if you have any questions or concerns. Not the asshole that other mom has some prejudice issues. You aren't forcing your daughter to do anything. She's talking to you about how she feels, and you're talking to her about how you feel. You sound remarkably well adjusted and polite in how you try to learn about something unfamiliar to you. Also to that mom. A culture that rejected her, have you taken a look at how a lot of white people treat LGBTQ folks?
From what you've said here, you told her your preference and still would be okay with whatever she chooses, and that makes you NTA. If you told her she had to have this name or that, that's another story, but you sound like a wonderful supportive parent accepting your daughter for who she is.
Not the asshole. The woman at your support group can take a seat. It's really sweet that you're talking to your daughter about taking an Indian name and are moving forward as a family. She's still Indian, and a piece of her heritage is a lovely idea.
Not the asshole. I also have a trans daughter. And to me it sounds like you are being incredibly thoughtful and involved in this process. And it seems like your daughter is okay with all of it. And that's all that matters. I think it's beautiful that you brought out alternate names from when you were pregnant. I also love that you offered to redo her Hindu naming ceremony. That's a beautiful thing. And as long as your family is happy and your daughter is happy, nothing else matters. Growing heart.
Absolutely not the asshole. It sounds like this mom has her own issues she needs to work through. You aren't forcing anything on your daughter, she is still part of your culture, and I think it sounds like you're being an awesome mom.
Not the asshole. Your daughter is very lucky to have you as her mom. You are willing to learning about new information and learn how to accepting. Wow. How much parents as you out here? Very few. You just want to embrace your culture and name with her. Your daughter will love you for that. From what I read, you didn't try to be a bad person. You should be proud of yourself that your daughter have you as her mom. Not the asshole. I am biracial. I have a very white name that actually doesn't even translate into the other race. Also due to my grandparents wanting their kids to fit in, they stopped speaking Spanish to them. So they lost their language, and effectively my generation did too. There is a lot of culture that I've lost on one side, and it makes me a little sad. Now I don't know much of anything about transgender name changes or anything, but it seems like you are being very open to the name change and wanting to be involved without stepping over your daughter's boundaries. I think it's super sweet you want to name her. As a parent myself, I would want to name my child too.
Not the asshole. As someone who's both desi and transgender, the offer of having her do the naming ceremony again is beautiful, and if it were my mum who offered me that, I would feel very touched and accepted. Also, that mom doesn't seem to understand how complex it is to be desi and transgender, in my opinion. And some advice. Trying to figure out the right name takes time, and there's no rush to pick a name. It personally took me 3 years to figure out that the right name for me is Rudra, and I know other trans people who also took a long time to find their name.
Not the asshole. I think this is a beautiful way to accept your daughter. Not only are you accepting her new identity, you are finding ways to maintain connections with your culture. And by the way, your relatives are woefully misinformed. Hindu scriptures are full of gender non-conforming concepts. Lord Shiva is not just Shiva, but Ardhanarishwara, half Nara, half Nari. And if they have read the Mahabharata, they should remember that Arjuna spent an entire year as Brihanala, an intersexed person. Shikandi, a male warrior, was born as Amba, a woman. Modern India may reject homosexuality, but gender fluidity and transgender have always been accepted.
Not the asshole. As long as you're just making a solicited suggestion, and not trying to impose anything, it's fine.
Hiya. I'm a trans woman as well, and I just wanna say you've been doing an amazing job supporting and loving your daughter, and I'm really happy to see both you and your husband are doing your best to better understand her. Wish my parents were as accepting as soon as I came out, lol. As far as your post, you seem to be giving full choice to your daughter over her name, and just offered some suggestions. As long as you continue to do so, and accept and love whatever name she chooses, you are absolutely not the asshole. I'm so happy for you, your daughter, and your husband, and I wish your daughter all the luck in the world in her transition. Carrot.
Not the asshole. Here, the most important thing isn't what a stranger thinks about what you did. This mother, even if you know her from the group, is a stranger. Here, the most important thing is what your daughter thinks about what you did, so, please, stop worrying about a stranger and ask your daughter how she feels Noe and how she felt when you told that to them. Not the asshole, you are being such a supportive mother to your daughter. And you are making her transition so much easier and less traumatic for her as well. It's incredible to see, honestly. Do not listen to the mom on your Facebook page. You just want her to keep a part of your culture in her life, and that is beautiful. As long as you are supportive of her and are willing to learn and to be open to any name she chooses, that's all that matters. Maybe sit down with her and ask if having a Hindu name is something that she wants, if it helps clear your mind. But definitely not the asshole here. You are doing great.
Not the asshole. If you were pressuring her to use a name you chose or even an Indian name, that would be bad, but it sounds like when your daughter came to you about changing their name, you voiced your thoughts and opinions and are now leaving it up to them. You've agreed to support their choice. I think you did great. And the bottom line is that the only person you need to worry about's opinion here is your daughter's. As long as she's happy, then don't worry about the angry white woman.
In my opinion, not the asshole. From what you wrote, you are not being pushy or insisting on it. So as long as you are going to accept her decision, whatever it might be, I think that bringing in a suggestion of, hey, if I knew you were a girl, I would have named you one of these, is all right. Just make it clear that you respect that it's her decision. Kudos to you for being supportive and educating yourself in that situation.
Not the asshole. You gave her a kind suggestion and have been wonderful at accepting her. All you did was ask and voice how it would be nice. You aren't forcing anything onto her.
Not the asshole. You aren't forcing it, which is nice, and you are very accepting parents, which is amazing. I am not Indian, so I don't know what traditional Indian families are like, but I've been following Jainism for a while now, and in both Jainism and Hinduism there is a third gender that encompasses everyone that isn't an exact male or female, such as trans and hermaphrodites, so I am surprised your friends and family aren't more accepting. But again, you guys are great parents for sticking by her side and letting her choose her own way. Keep being awesome. Not the asshole. I'm trans and chose a white name, as opposed to the weird Victorian name I like, because I was thinking of my future and how I would be perceived in professional situations which, unfortunately, favor mainstream white names. If she's still unsure, perhaps suggest an Indian middle name. And it's not uncommon where I live for Asian immigrants to use their Chinese name at home and their American name at school, work, so that's also an option.
Not the asshole. It sounds like you're being very supportive of your daughter. From my understanding, you would like her to have a traditional name, but would be fine if she chose something else. It seems like the other mom is the only one who has a problem here. Thank you for showing your daughter love and support. She will remember that she can trust you and count on you in the future. You sound like a wonderful parent.
Not the asshole. I think what you are doing for your daughter is incredible. You have done everything right, especially when trying to balance your culture and embracing her gender. I think that suggesting an Indian name is a lovely idea to bring back her culture into her name and add real meaning to her renaming herself. At the end of the day, you aren't trying to force her to have an Indian name, you are just suggesting that it would be a nice idea if she was interested. You are defiantly not the asshole, and I think you are doing an incredible job embracing both your culture and her new gender.
Trans guy here, 100% not the asshole. The involvement and willingness to be supportive of your daughter is something that I've never gotten from my parents. You're being involved with the name change, and you're not being forceful or anything. Your daughter doesn't seem to feel like she's being forced. You gave her the option. If my parents had been that involved in my name change, that would have made my relationship with them stronger. Thank you for doing what you're doing and keep it up. Not the asshole. That mom was totally off base. You were being supportive, not forceful. I also know a trans dude that has done this. When he came out, he asked his parents what they would have named him if he had been AMAB, and that's the name he picked. Names are so special, and I think it's wonderful that you're so invested in this with her. Coming from a trans guy, FTM, not the asshole at all. You are a great mom, and you are doing everything right. The asshole here is that white mom that thinks she knows what's best for your daughter. You aren't forcing your child to have an Indian name, just saying that you would love it if you did. You even said that if she wanted to go with a white name, then that was totally fine. Ultimately, it's up to your daughter anyway, and nothing can change that. You're doing great. Your daughter is lucky to have such accepting parents. Green heart.
As a fellow Indian, I must stand and applaud how amazing of a parent you are to your daughter. Not the asshole at all. White mom sounds like she sips from the non-Western cultures are all bigoted and need our enlightenment cup of xenophobia. Your daughter is trans and Indian. How she chooses to live in and intertwine those identities is up to her to navigate with your support, but the woman who went off at you lacks both the knowledge and the range to form an informed opinion. You sound like you're doing your best for your daughter. Ignore the lady in your support group. She's not worth your tears.
Not the asshole. Trans girl here. A suggestion isn't a big deal. As long as you don't guilt her if she doesn't want to, then you're fine.
You are melting my heart. Melt with how kind and supportive you're being. Not the asshole at all. JT was merely a suggestion, and it's not like you're making her do anything. That mom clearly has some unresolved issues of her own.
Second generation, gay Bangladeshi American, here. Not exactly the same, but I can relate to your daughter a little bit. I think you're totally okay, especially because your daughter is interested in the idea of using a traditional name. Chin up, you're doing a great job. Heart. Not the asshole. If your daughter don't see this as an offense, no one should. Congrats for being a supportive mother.
Not the asshole. Can I just say that you have been both a decent human being and a great mother. You're supportive, you've been taking all the right steps. You're even giving her option as to how she can still represent and be accepted her culture in spite of some abandonment. Faith, culture and sexuality can coexist, and you are showing how it's done. Other mom can go sit on a caddis.